Hey everybody, today we're coming back with the second installment of the Best Bet series on the channel. Today we're going to be looking at this Saturday night's UFC Vegas 70, Krylov versus Spann, and the best plays to attack if you're looking to make some money on the card this weekend. We're going to kick it off with the first bet, so let's get this started. Up first is going to be in the co-main event of the evening with Andre Sergipano Muniz. Listen, he started off at like a minus 190. Now he's up to minus 225, minus 230. I expect it to get a little bit higher, probably closer to minus 245 come Saturday night. But I see a lot of people in the MMA community saying that Brendan Allen is a solid bet for this weekend and that Brendan Allen is the better striker and Brendan Allen's going to pick apart Muniz on the feet and he has the grappling and scrambling ability to avoid the jiu-jitsu of Muniz. Now, part of that I agree. Allen is definitely the better striker. But at the same time, if you look at one of Allen's most recent wins in Sam Alvey, before he caught Sam Alvey with that left hook, which eventually led to the drop and the back take to the rear naked choke, he was getting tagged up. Alvey was catching him with big hooks and kind of rocking Brendan Allen. And if you're getting caught by a guy who throws one punch at a time in Sam Alvey, yeah, I know he's a veteran. I know he's fought some of the best in the game. But he's 0-8-1 in his last 9 fights. And I just think that Muniz is technical enough where he can land that left kick to the body. He can land that right hook to the straight left hand on the orthodox fighter in Brendan Allen. And once it does hit the floor, I think Brendan Allen's going to be a fish out of water. Now, he does have good jiu-jitsu. He does have good submission ability like we already broke down. But Muniz is a different type of grappler than Brendan Allen has ever faced before. And I think once it hits the floor and Muniz is able to establish that half guard, able to establish side control, work to the full mount, get the back, get the hooks in, control the wrist to try to open up the pathway to the neck, I think Muniz is eventually going to find his way to a submission. So I like Andre Muniz on the money line at a minus 225. If you think there's a possibility that Brendan Allen is going to survive and make it to the judges' scorecards, then I like the minus 225 on Muniz. It's a little bit high of a price tag, but I honestly think it should be higher when we're talking about a guy who has the jiu-jitsu, the caliber of Muniz. And then I also like the by submission, but that's a little bit more risky because I thought he was going to be able to submit Uriah Hall, even though Hall had never been submitted in his career prior to their fight. And he was just kind of was able to maintain position, look to maintain control, and wasn't rushing for the sub, and that could lead to a decision. But I do think he'll find the submission on Brendan Allen, which is why I also like the submission prop at plus 120. Up next, you have Tatiana Suarez, who goes up against Montana De La Rosa in her return after almost 4 years away from the UFC octagon. Yeah, I love Tatiana Suarez in this spot. I think Montana De La Rosa is a good slight play on an underdog because she's at plus 550, probably going to get closer to plus 650, plus 700 by the time fight night rolls around on Saturday. But I love Tatiana Suarez. They call her the female Khabib for a reason. She has one of the highest takedown accuracy rates in all of mixed martial arts, and she scores at least 4 takedowns in every one of her fights, which in one hand you could say, well, she's getting multiple takedowns because the opponents are able to work their way back up to the feet. You know, if she was really a good grappler, she'd get one takedown and they wouldn't be able to work their way back up. Man, this is modern day mixed martial arts, and Tatiana Suarez is relentless. Her striking isn't the best. She has good outside low kicks and inside low kicks to maintain the distance and get the outside foot on the opposite stance opponent, which can set up the head on the inside single, and then the chain wrestling attempts working to the body lock, dragging one direction, misdirecting back to get the outside trip. The change of directions, the takedown attempts, the relentlessness with the wrestling. And once she does get her opponents to the ground, she just absolutely mauls them with ground and pound. I mean, just look at the fight against the former champion in Carla Esparza. Vicious elbows, vicious hammer fist. She does not stop moving, and she's always trying to get you out of there. Now, she's such a big favorite on the money line that I wouldn't play the money line at all. Move that away. Don't even think about it. If you're going to play money line anything, then you just take a shot on the underdog in Montana De La Rosa, because De La Rosa is scrappy. She does have good jiu-jitsu in her own right. She's a good scrambler, and I honestly believe that she has the better striking, but the wrestling of Tatiana Suarez is going to override that all. So when it comes to the best bets for the fight, I like the under 2.5 rounds. I think Suarez is going to be able to get her out of there. I think Montana De La Rosa will be competitive early, but eventually she will get taken down. She will stop getting back up, and she will get put in that half guard, in the side control, in the full mount, get elbowed, get hammer fisted, and all the stuff like that. So the under 2.5 is at plus 130. I like Suarez to finish this fight. no matter if it's in the first or the second round or early on in the third round. I do not think De La Rosa makes it to the scorecards, even though she is tough and it will be competitive. And I also like Tatiana Suarez inside the distance by KO, TKO, or submission at the same odds of a plus 130. Listen, I just love this. I think that Suarez is going to be able to get her out of there. Now, being off for 3 years, I could see why you might not want to touch it and might be weary in terms of, you know, playing this fight because Suarez has been gone for almost 4 years, but I think she comes back. I think she looks good. I think this is a good fight, but a competitive fight, kind of like a measuring stick to showcase where Tatiana Suarez is, even though she's been gone for so long. But I think Suarez will get her out of there, whether it's getting her down and getting the ground and pound or ground and pounding her to the point where De La Rosa gives up a neck and gets choked out. So Tatiana Suarez inside the distance at plus 130, and the under 2.5 rounds is the best play for the fight this week. Up next is going to be the former LFA flyweight champion and Charles Energy Johnson as he goes up against O'Day, the Jamaican sensation Osborne. I love Charles Johnson on the money line. He started at a minus 170. That he's been bet all the way down to a minus 155. So there's been money coming in on the dog in Osborne. And I could see why people are favoring Osborne, but at the same time, I don't agree with it at all. I think Osborne is a sloppier, less well-rounded version of what Charles the Energy Johnson is inside the cage. He's got very solid teep kicks to the body, does O'Day, but Charles Johnson can throw those just as well. So I think that kind of cancels out. And when it comes to the boxing technique, the technique of Charles Johnson is levels above O'Day Osborne. O'Day's kind of a loopy striker with overhands, hooks, uppercuts, fighting on angles. You know, he loves the check hook, and he can throw it with a lot of power, but the technique just isn't there. And the defense of Osborne is really what's going to worry me here against a guy who has the technique of Charles Johnson on the feet. He's been hurt, he's been hit, he's been knocked out. Just look at his last fight against Tyson Nam. If he gets hit with a big shot, he can be put out. And based on the fact that he doesn't have the best head movement, his high guard really isn't there. He fights with his hands down for the majority of his fights. And so does Charles Johnson, but his head movement, his angles, his ability to see the shots coming and roll with them, slip underneath, and cut on good angles to get out of the way and come back with counters is levels above O'Day Osborne. And based on the defensive irresponsibility and the liability that O'Day Osborne is on the feet, I think Johnson's going to be able to get him out of there. So aside from the money line and the minus 155, I like the technical striking of Johnson to put away O'Day Osborne, and buy TKO or buy KO TKO for Charles Johnson is at a plus 225. So the money line on Johnson is the best play, but if you're looking for a little bit of juice to get you loose, then I would take the buy KO TKO win for the Energy at plus 225. But I love Charles Johnson against O'Day Osborne at UFC Vegas 70. And for the final bet on the card, I like the White Lion in Johan Lainez as he goes up against proper Mike Malott. Now, this is going to be my least confident out of all these bets I've given you. They go from most confident to least confident. And I think that Johan Lainez's power is going to give Mike Malott a lot of trouble. Now, Malott is 8-1 in his professional MMA career. His only loss came to Hakeem Dawodu down at, I believe it could have been at 170 pounds, but the only thing I can think of is the fact that Mike Malott lost by KO TKO to a guy who doesn't even have that good of knockout power in the 145-pound featherweight division inside the UFC. Hakeem Dawodu has gotten knockouts before. He got a head kick knockout against Yoshinori Horie, and you know what? That guy really hasn't done anything since then. And Hakeem has looked decent in some of his fights, but at the same time, he doesn't have the knockout power. He has power in his striking, good technical striking, but he doesn't have that heavy of a punch. And if you're comparing the knockout ability of a Hakeem Dawodu to the knockout ability of a Johan Lainez, I think that it's night and day, man. And yes, Johan Lainez doesn't have the cardio. He's a one-rounder bust fighter. But Mike Malott in the same category, I don't think he has the greatest cardio either, but he does have the grappling, the wrestling, the submission attempts with the beautiful guillotine he got on the Contender Series to push the pace a little bit longer than Lainez, and we know that Lainez kind of falls off a cliff after the midpoint in the second round, so he's basically 1 round, 1.5 round fighter. After that, it just really goes downhill. If he fights clean and fights technical and doesn't rely so much on his power, then he might have a little bit more gas in the tank, but Mike Malott is a guy who has better technical striking. I wouldn't say that. He has better technical boxing than Lainez, but he's also defensively irresponsible, and he's a liability with the striking defense. You look at the fight against Mickey Gall. Yeah, he knocked him out with a beautiful left hook, knocked out Mickey Gall. Before he knocked him out, he was getting tagged up. He was getting hit with straight punches, with hooks, with jabs, and he got his nose bloodied up. He got his face bloodied up. If you're getting hit and tagged by a guy in Mickey Gall, who, yeah, he dropped Sage Northcutt, but what has Sage Northcutt done except get his face broken by Cosmo Alexander over in one championship? You know, comparing Johan Lainez to Mickey Gall in terms of striking ability, it's night and day. And, you know, I think that Mike Malott is a little bit better defensively, but I think he's going to be there to get hit. And at a plus 185 on the money line for Johan Lainez, I like the play. Now, I said it's my least confident out of everything that I've given you in this video, and that's true. But I think the overhand, the left hook, the straight right hand of Johan Lainez, even in the fight he lost to Gabe Green where he just fell off a cliff because his cardio was out the window, he hurt him really bad with one overhand right and pretty much knocked him out on the feet. But when his head hit the floor from the KO, he woke back up and Gabe Green was able to survive. If he hits Mike Malott with that shot, I think he puts him out. And I like Johan Lainez to win by knockout, so I like the money line at a plus 185. And I also like to buy KO TKO, which is listed at a plus 300. And for the most likely method of victory in terms of Lainez, if you're on his side, you're getting almost double the odds that you'd get by just playing him on the money line. And really the only way Lainez is going to win is by catching Malott on the chin and getting him out of there. I could see a potential submission, but for the most part, it's KO or bust for Lainez. And at plus 300, that's the best play aside from the money line for the White Lion. I do like the under 1.5 at minus 125 if you don't know which side you want to pick, but you're guaranteed that somebody's going to get finished. I think there most likely will be a first round finish, but it's my least confident on the 3 bets that I have listed for this fight. So maybe you should stay away from it, but if you want to play at minus 125, isn't too bad. And that's going to be it for my best bets for UFC Vegas 70. If you agree with me, then you can tail along because I do have some action on almost every single one of these bets. So if you like it, come on and join me and let's make some money this weekend. If you don't, leave in the comments what you think are better options or what you think just in terms of what I've listed in this video for how to play UFC Vegas 70. I'm your host, Double M. This has been the UFC Vegas 70 best bets, and I'm out. Have a good night and enjoy the fights this weekend. Let's make some money, baby.